Hello, loves. Welcome. I missed you. Did you miss me? If you are new, welcome. Hello, how are you? And if you are returning, thanks for coming back. So, today I wanted to talk about depression. And well, it is Why Am I Like This Wednesday? So, sometimes I tend to try to understand who I am and why am I the person that I am. And I will Google until it starts to repeat itself. And then I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I guess there's not that much information left. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is depression. I have suffered with depression since I was 9 years old. I was diagnosed after I came out of foster care for a little while and I started living with my grandmother again. I did not know what it was. I remember my therapist at the time telling me how I was feeling was a form of depression, and I remember not understanding. And she would ask me a line of questions. Are you tired? I was actually never really tired at that age. But are you sad? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel, which are also signs of PTSD. And I had that as well. So there was a line of questions that she asked me, and I remember answering yes to pretty much all of them, minus being tired. And she said, oh, honey, you're feeling a form of depression. And I remember being 9 years old. I've heard the word before, but I just remember thinking to myself, I'm depressed and I'm 9. And then I also remember thinking, like, what else can I possibly go through in this life? Like, I'm 9 and I'm depressed. I should be enjoying life right now. Like, it was so mind-blowing to me, to be honest. So I just remember thinking why I felt the way that I felt, why I was not happy with the way that I felt. I remember wanting to change it. And as I became older and I was an adult, right when I was diagnosed with severe depression, I remember crying and being sad and then looking it up and wondering, let me go ahead and read this to you. So I Googled depression, or more or less like, how do I know if I have depression? Well, if you have depression, you may experience 1, feelings of hopelessness, guilt, or worthlessness. I almost feel like everybody feels that way, even people who consider themselves successful and happy. I'm not saying every single person in the world, but I feel like the majority of the world feels that way. Do you know what I mean? A persistent feeling of loneliness or sadness. I remember feeling so alone all the time while I was surrounded by people. And I think it was because I also felt misunderstood and that I didn't belong. But I was so stuck on being a people pleaser that I didn't feel like I could truly be myself, if that makes sense. Difficulty concentrating. I'm also dyslexic and I have test anxiety, so concentration and I don't know why. Why is it so hard for me to concentrate on certain things? I used to think that it was because when I was being abused, it was easier to let my mind wander and think of a whole bunch of different things and not concentrate on one thing because I wanted it to hurry up and end. And I'm not sure if you do that so much in survival mode, if that's how your brain ends up working because you did it that way for so long. If that's the case, that's really sad. See, this is me always trying to make sense out of things and trying to understand it better. Why am I like this? A loss of interest in enjoyable activities. You run into people who shame others for not having the motivation to get up and do something. That's depression. You run into people saying, you just got to snap out of it. You just have to do it. I wish it was that easy. Why is it so hard for people to see that people who are dealing with severe depression, it's not that easy? There are some people, if you run into people who have had it, they can understand you. People who have never been depressed or have only experienced a small portion of depression don't understand. There's a difference between being depressed and severely depressed. Like there's a difference. There's different stages and levels, and you can kind of snap out of, and it's situational, and some are based on just life. I know for me, mine was based off of trying to run away from, I don't know, let's say my entire life. So yeah, you can't do that. There's times that I will be so energetic and happy and excited and looking forward to go to the gym, and I have this whole day planned out, and my kids would call me in the middle of me doing something for myself, or my husband would call me, or my mom or my grandmother would call me, and they needed me to help them with something. And I was just triggered into thinking, do I ever get anything for myself? Why can't I just have a day to myself? I want to concentrate on me and work on me. And it hits me to where I just give up. And because I am depressed and I suffer from severe depression, it is easier for me to get discouraged than it would be for someone who has dealt with a more mild form of depression. I think sometimes people who have had depression assume that depression is kind of like just cut and dry when it's so not. So yeah, you can not want to do anything, not want to deal with anybody. You want to be alone, but you don't want to be alone. You feel lonely when you're surrounded by people. You tend to feel sorry for yourself, which I don't know about you, but for me, when I feel sorry for myself, I get even more angry. Like, you're here because of your own fault. You got to figure it out. But then I run into the feeling sorry for myself where it's like, am I really though? Is it really my fault? Yeah, I'm an adult now and I've been through a lot, but who I am today was based off of having to live my life on fight or flight and survival mode since I could remember. So now as an adult, I don't have to live in that mindset, but I don't know how to unlearn it. And while I'm trying to unlearn it, and I'm in therapy to unlearn it, and I Google things to unlearn it, it is a lot of work. So much work. So much work. 5, a lack of energy. 6, trouble sleeping. I have insomnia. I will say that when I am working out and I'm working and I feel good about myself and I feel like I'm being productive and I'm being like a good mom and a good wife and a good daughter and a good granddaughter, I get this feeling, this rush of accomplishment, and I just feel so great, and I can sleep well when I'm like that. It's almost like I sleep better when there's chaos in my life, but not dysfunctional chaos. Like when it's just like my days like this, and working out has to be part of that, and eating healthy has to be part of that. So while I'm working out and eating healthy and eating every 2 hours and losing weight and feeling great about myself and going to work and picking up my kids and dropping them off in daycare and doing homework and taking them to activities and still made it a point to do a load of laundry, clean the house, and cook dinner, I feel like a badass. And when it's time to go to bed, I'm like, But if I do half of that, I have guilt throughout the rest of the day. And when it's time to go to bed, my brain doesn't stop thinking about what I should have done, what I could have done, why didn't I do it? And then getting mad at myself because I start remembering the things that I did when I should have done it. The form of guilt, yes. Changes in your appetite. See, I know some people when they're depressed, they lose a ton of weight. Not me. I will say I don't gain any either. It doesn't affect my appetite. And there's a part of me that sometimes wishes it did, but then there's also a part of me that's like, do I though? It doesn't affect, like, I will say if it's really, really bad, I'll eat like maybe once a day, or I'll forget to eat. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm feeling a little nauseous and lightheaded. Maybe you should eat something. Or I forget that I ate something and I realize that I didn't and thought I did. And then I just eat something that's not too smart. And then I feel guilty that I did that because now I am eating something that I shouldn't be eating, and it crosses out why I went to the gym, and it makes me feel like the whole week of me eating healthy and working out is canceled, even though that's not the case. Somehow in my brain, I feel like it is. I need to make it make sense. There's the overthinker in me too. How common is depression? According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, trusted source, about 1 out of every 6 adults in the United States will experience depression. And I can bet that 1 out of 6 who do experience it, a good amount of them don't even know that that is depression. And a lot of people, I feel like they don't want to admit that that's what it is. Like, no, I'm just not having a good day. Okay, well, see how long or how many days go that you have a bad day. And I used to think, is it depression if I've had happy times in between? Yeah, it is. I used to think, like, I remember there were times where, like, for months I was really happy and I was doing well, even for like maybe a year or two. Yeah, you can have depression and be happy. It's weird, but you can. And I think one of the things for that is because you can go from feeling great and doing great to quickly being knocked down. And I feel that if you didn't have depression to begin with, even before things were getting better, it wouldn't be so easy to be knocked down if you didn't already have that weight on you, if that makes sense. How is depression diagnosed? A healthcare professional will speak with you to evaluate depressive symptoms you may be experiencing within a 2-week time period, and to learn more about your family's health history. So, I found out maybe 4 years ago, that depression can be genetic. See, the sad thing for me when I think about that is I don't remember not being depressed. I remember having happy times. When you recognize that you've had depression since you could remember, and then you stop to think, like, I have kids, and if it's genetic, I've passed it down to them. Anxiety can be passed down on top of other mental health disorders that can be passed down. And it makes you stop to think, like, I would have wanted them to teach me that in health class. If you do get pregnant, or when you decide to get pregnant and have children, remember that the things that you have wrong with you can trickle down to your children. I'm working on my depression now more than I've ever worked on it. So all I can say now is I know that because I am learning the tools and helping my children see that I'm learning the tools, And I kind of put all of them in therapy too. They're able to recognize the signs earlier to avoid allowing it to get so bad. Nobody did that for me. I just remember seeing what depression looked like. And when I stopped to think about it, I don't think I know one person, not one, in my entire family on my mom's side that hasn't suffered from a form of depression. Cousins, aunts, uncles, great aunts, great uncles, I think we have all. So when I stopped to look at it that way, I was gonna get it. Like, there was no way I wasn't gonna get it. My father side of the family, I know of a few that have dealt with it, but I don't know if all of them have. I've just recently reconnected with them, so I don't know. And I'm pretty sure my bio dad had it as well. It's really sad, or at least for me it was, when I realized that everything that I feel is wrong with me, that I just realized and learned that I inherited genetically from my family, I have now passed on to my children. And there's guilt, and there's anger, and there's sadness, and there's confusion in a way also, because damn, that sucks. Here I wanted to look up, does depression have triggers? Depression is a complex condition that can be caused by a combination of genetic and environmental factors. Some common triggers of depression are grief and loss, such as a bereavement or divorce; rejection, such as social isolation or breakup. I do not handle rejection well. I don't get angry. I'm not mean. Because I feel that I felt my whole life I was rejected in certain ways, I always thought that it was because of myself, that there was something wrong with me. So because of that, I didn't have anybody tell me that there wasn't anything wrong with me. I was a child. What the heck was going to be wrong with me? Because I didn't have anybody help steer me in the right direction to better understand the feelings that I was feeling and why certain people around me were reacting the way they were towards me. That's another thing that happens when you grow up with addicts and there's a lot of mental health issues and depression. The kids experience the aftermath of that, and they end up feeling incomplete, not enough, and spend their lives trying to be enough to change who you are towards them. And no one tells them that it's because of the addiction, or it's because of the undiagnosed depression or mental health issues, or self-medicating with drugs instead of, medication for your mental health or what it is that's wrong with you. The kids suffer. So I feel like that was something that we experienced a lot, unfortunately. So when someone doesn't like me, I've recently, probably for the past 3 to 4 years, started to not care and accept and understand that I'm not everybody's cup of tea and not everyone's going to like me. And they don't have to. Why? And I used to never be able to understand, like, why don't you like me? What did I do? Let me undo it. And I didn't realize and recognize that when I used to do that, I was lessening who I was as an individual. I kept on wanting to be a perfect version of me for them, or the vision they had in their head of what they thought or wanted me to be. I kept on wanting to be that so I could be liked, without realizing that I was literally losing myself in the process. I did that for so many years, and I'm sure that did not help my depression, that I got to a point, which is where I'm at now, where I know myself, but I don't. And I think that's really sad. And I have a lot of guilt and sadness because I also feel like I did that to myself. But I did that to myself because it was taught behavior as a child that I taught myself to survive my childhood. And as an adult, I don't know how to unlearn it. And I just started teaching myself to unlearn it, but it's a lot of work. Ooh, it's easier to stay crazy or dysfunctional or toxic. It is way easier. Stress such as work pressure or family conflict. So I feel like the part of me that was depressed a lot around my family was because I was the black sheep of my family. I've always been the black sheep of my family. I didn't realize that in some ways I'm a little more like my father's side of the family, which I Googled what are the most impressionable ages in a child, and it's from 6 to 8. Well, when I was sexually abused by my father, it started when I was 5.5, 6, and it didn't end till I was 8.5, 9. So yeah, I could see why I am all types of screwed up, because that was a time in my life that who I was becoming and who I should have been was supposed to start developing, and all that poor little girl got to do was try to be safe and try to survive and try to just accept that her life was going to be that. When you're that young and those things happen to you, you don't see an end. You just hope and pray that one day it will end. I mean, mine did, but my heart goes out to a lot of people whose didn't for a long time. Sharing my story, I've had a lot of people message me to start understanding more about different types of SA, and I always knew that there was different types, but man, please share your story with me if you would like. You can DM me or email me. It's just heartbreaking that people have endured so much. It almost makes you happy that your life ended up the way it did, because you hear how bad others' lives were, and then you feel guilty, which is so twisted. Like, I feel bad that your life was so crappy, but in a way, I'm happy that mine wasn't as bad as yours. But that sounds so horrible. But I am happy that mine wasn't that bad, but I'm so sad that yours was. Does that make sense? Illness such as chronic pain or cancer, I'm sure that'll do it to you. Lack of sleep, which affects mood and cognition. What I will say about that is sleep is so important, and I think that we forget how important it is for us to have sleep and hydrate and eat foods that are nourishing to our bodies. And when you do those things, they're actually harder than we think they should be. But it's just easier to be lazy and not care about those things and be happy that your body is surviving off of what it's surviving off of. Isn't that sad? Oh, I hate when I think about things like that. Okay. Dwelling on negative thoughts or feelings. That is probably every day, all day for me. If I am not keeping myself busy and occupied and distracted, I have negative thoughts all the time. My mom calls it stinking thinking, which it is. I always compare myself to others, and I always bash myself, and I'm learning to do better. And by doing better, I mean, like, I'll tell myself, God, you could have done better. Why didn't you do that? And then I'll tell myself, it's okay, you can do it tomorrow. So I still bash myself, but I also pat myself, if that makes sense. One thing I want to tell you guys is I said this to myself a few years ago, and it kind of stuck with me, where you should treat yourself with the kindness that you treat others with. You should love yourself the way you love others, if not more. When you give yourself advice, make sure that you're giving yourself the same advice that you would give another person in the same situation. Because we hold ourselves to a different standard than we do others. But why is it that it's so easy for us to be empathetic to others but not to ourselves? Knowing that most people who are empaths have struggled in their lives a lot. So we have gone through a lot, and why can't we be nice to ourselves? Because nobody taught us. Nobody was that nice to us. Nobody made us feel that important or special. So how do we know how to be important and special to ourselves if nobody taught us that? I'm struggling right now trying to make sure that I teach my daughters that, and I do feel that sometimes they struggle with it. And I have a lot of guilt because I feel like they've grown up with a mother who has experienced a lot of depression and hasn't taken care of herself correctly. So they're doing the same unintentionally. I know theirs isn't where mine was at that age. However, I'm really sad that they have it at all. So there's a lot of mom guilt. Wish somebody would have told me, work on yourself before you decide to have children. I figured that one out way after. Money problems, such as debt or poverty. I will say since the economy, since COVID, since a little bit the year before COVID, because that's when my husband almost died. He was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, and that was just the hardest time of our lives. And it took a year for recovery, and he still struggles with a few things. Then after that, COVID happened. Then after that, COVID again. And then after that, COVID starts going down a little bit, but it's just so many things started happening, and my kids were in high school, and things became more expensive and more school activities, and I didn't want them to not do activities because then I felt guilty that we couldn't afford them. And it was just that I was already struggling with depression, so that just kind of brings it down. And then you run into people who tell you, if you're stressing over money, get a job. If you're stressing over money, do a few side hustles. Okay, I can do that. However, I still struggle with the guilt of keeping myself so busy that I can help us financially, but then my kids are getting neglected. And I just feel like I can never win. Life transitions such as retirement or moving. I feel that I've also dealt with a lot of additional depression when we moved from Orange County to Corona. And it's because I'm an Orange County brat. I will always be an Orange County brat. My husband says it's the OC curtain. You can leave my curtain alone because I don't care. There's a different vibe in Orange County. There's a different energy in Orange County. I grew up in Tustin and Irvine, and most of my friends and I think the same, talk the same, understand each other the same. We just get each other. And when I've met people from his group or like from Long Beach, they kind of reminded me a little more of like New York personalities, and actually not as friendly. I mean, I got along with a lot of them. They were great, but there were times that they were like, you're so happy. Why are you always smiling? And even though I've always suffered with depression and stuff, I've always just been a happy person with depression, if that makes any sense. I always tried to, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten better with it, where it's just, I'm sad over something, but you learn to mask your feelings because you don't want other people to ask you what's wrong. And you learn to hide your emotions so well that it just becomes a part of you. I think a lot of people struggle with not showing their emotions in public. And then when people see that you become like MIA, they're like, what's wrong? They're not used to you being that person. And it's because it finally got to you. It caught up, and you just can't be fake anymore. You can't be everybody's entertainment. You can't fix everybody. You just are exhausted. It's sad. It's really sad and heartbreaking that depression affects you so much. So another thing that I wanted to look on is, what form of depression do you have? Do you know if you do have depression? Do you feel if you have depression? Have you been diagnosed with depression? Do you take medication? How are you feeling about yourself right now? How are you feeling about who you are as an individual? Are you happy with yourself? And if not, what are you doing to be happy with yourself? Do you struggle with snapping yourself out of depression? Because, man, I do. I will need a few days. It used to take me weeks or months, and now it's days, sometimes hours. For me, if I have a good playlist and I just start to manifest way more than I've ever done before, it actually works, dude. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I haven't dug that much into it, but I've been telling myself lately, what's meant for me will be. And, you know, my daughter just sent me a text message today saying, hey, January is our winter formal. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my husband's not going to be at work for a week. So that's less that we're going to be making. I am still trying to find a job, and we're going to be short a certain amount of money. So when it comes to financial stresses and situations, I know those are also my triggers for my depression. And I think to myself, okay, can you change it? And I always tell myself, yes, I can, because I always make things happen. That's just who I am. That's my personality. But can you fix it right now? Do what you can. And if you can't do more, accept it. So I'm learning how to just accept what I can control and let go of what I can't. That's another thing that I tell myself. This is my time that I have made it a point to work on my mental health and who I am as an individual and find myself, because this is my time to shine. I don't know the pace that it's going to come in, but I'm just going to accept it. And, you know, I'm grateful. I have a Christmas tree. I have pretty decorations. I have a nice TV behind me. I have a home. I have food. I have friends. I have so many things to be happy for. And the thing is, when you're depressed, I think it's extremely important to remind yourself about the good. I'm happy that I'm alive. I'm happy that even though I'm overweight, my health isn't as bad as I thought it was, because I've gone to the doctors recently, and I can still fix it, and I could still work on me, and it's not too late. And the thing is, I feel like when you have depression, you feel like it's too late. You feel like you're just in this hole and you can't climb out of it because things just keep on piling up. And I'm working on this myself, but I will tell you that I also think that, as annoying as it is to hear this when you're going through it, know that you have to tackle one thing at a time. Stop setting unrealistic expectations on yourself, because it's going to continue to affect your depression and your progress and success in anything, because you're setting yourself up for failure. Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. Try to understand yourself. And by doing so, heal yourself. The child in you, the teenager in you, and the young adult in you, and the kind of older adult in you. I guess that's what I'd consider myself. I don't consider myself a young adult. I'm 43. But I hope everyone has an amazing day. I hope you do something kind for yourself. And I will see you guys next week on Wednesday. Thank you for joining, and have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.